The topic of conversation surrounding the Kansas City Chiefs this offseason has been the wide receiver position. And as we near day to day to the NFL draft, those rumors will continue to heat up. Today we'll dive into some of the latest news regarding these potential trade targets for the Kansas City Chiefs. But before we do get into all of that, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, as I'm going to keep you up to date on anything Kansas City Chief related that you do not want to miss out on. And without further ado, let's have some fun. Chiefs Kingdom, I tried my hardest, but it's like when you mention a wide receiver, we start stretching out and hoping that the Kansas City Chiefs may trade or may sign for a player just because the depth is looking very, very slim on the roster. And we got a couple updates because it's the coaches meeting, owner meeting going on in Arizona. And Coach Reid had a few words to say about Odell Beckham Jr. Arizona Cardinals may have not lifted, but maybe more lenient with DeAndre Hopkins, and now the Kansas City Chiefs may have another trade candidate at wide receiver. So let's discuss, let's get right into it. And the first topic of conversation is we're going to start with DeAndre Hopkins. Now, the Arizona Cardinals recently reported saying that they will let DeAndre Hopkins go and meet with any team ownerships and anyone who is interested in trading for him to try to push a trade and make it go quicker and see if all sides can agree to terms. And my initial thought is, that's cool and all, but did you rescind on what your asking price was? Because, yeah, the Chiefs and DeAndre Hopkins can talk. The Bills and DeAndre Hopkins can talk. Any other 31 teams can talk to DeAndre Hopkins, but if you're still requesting a second-round pick and a player, it doesn't do no one any good. You're going to have to lower that basically request to what everyone has been mentioning it should be, which is a fourth-round pick. Maybe you can get a third at best. And I understand what the Arizona Cardinals are wanting because they know they might be a struggling team next year. They might miss Kyler Murray for the majority of the year, and they want to get more draft picks, draft capitals, and try to build this team up with youth. But DeAndre Hopkins isn't going to do that. And there was also reports later last week saying that the Arizona Cardinals are hoping to get a Christian McCaffrey type of trade for DeAndre Hopkins. And I just don't see that. Like, that is very highly unlikely. There's actually a lot of things to go into it as well. It's like, if you look at both players, two different positions, and yeah, you would say running back is more underappreciated, but Christian McCaffrey in today's NFL is a one-on-one, and also he fits the 49ers scheme perfectly, so the Niners would do anything they can to get Christian McCaffrey. You're dealing with a DeAndre Hopkins who unfortunately did have a suspension last year and has had prior injuries. Now, do I think that affects his performance on the field? I don't, because even last year when he missed more than half the year, played with 3 different quarterbacks, and still had 700 yards. I get what the Arizona Cardinals are trying to do, but at the end of the day, I don't think you're going to get anywhere near that value. And also, you're asking another team to take on that contract as well. There have been reports saying that DeAndre Hopkins is open to extending his deal to help another team. That's cool. And there's also other reports saying that if a trade was to be facilitated, that the Cardinals would eat some of that cap. That's cool. But also my confusion lies if those two parts are true, and let's say you actually adjusted your request, DeAndre Hopkins would have probably been traded a long time ago. So what's going on? And in my mindset, I'm leaning towards you guys haven't adjusted what you have requested in a second round in a player. And if you haven't done that, then what's the use of him talking to anyone? Because no one's interested in him at a second round price. So it's cool. It sounds great. But at the end of the day, if that's your asking price, no one is biting on it. It's going to be interesting to see because we're getting close to the draft. Now we are getting a little less than a month away. Day to day, these rumors will continue to swirl, and they won't stop until DeAndre Hopkins is traded. With me, do I believe the Kansas City Chiefs will trade for DeAndre Hopkins? I don't. And like I mentioned prior, is I've been driving that bandwagon heavy. I want DeAndre Hopkins on this team. Also, If the Chiefs do trade for him, I would be ecstatic. But I just don't see it at this point. I see the Kansas City Chiefs solely focusing on the draft right now for a wide receiver. Now, can they sign someone? Of course they can. But again, as I mentioned, time in and time out, you got to listen to what Brett Veach does or see his track record as well. He likes to get most of his talent in the draft. And if he can get a young receiver in the draft, you'd be paying your top 3 receivers on a rookie contract with Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, and whoever they draft in the first, second, or whatever round. The only guy you will be paying for the next couple of years, which also you can restructure or move on from as well, is Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So there's not that much money invested in the receiver position, and I think that's how Brett Veach wants to keep it unless one of these star names come to him at his price. Brett Veach knows and Chiefs Kingdom knows that Patrick Mahomes can make any wide receiver look great. And I know a lot of Chiefs Kingdom doesn't like to stick to that whatsoever because they're like, but if you give them an elite talent, they have a chance at running like an undefeated schedule and being like one of the best teams of all time. And I hear you on that as well. And he did look really great with Tyreek Hill, but Tyreek's an elite receiver and we never pushed really 17-0. We had our hiccups. Every team is always going to have their hiccups. So it's going to be interesting to see how these DeAndre Hopkins rumors pan out. For me, I basically jumped off the bandwagon. But if they trade for him, I know we'll trade for him at value Brett Veach wants, and I would be totally happy with. So let's just see how it all unfolds. The other receiver who has been basically rumored to go to the Kansas City Chiefs for the better part of over a year now is Odell Beckham Jr. And a reporter asked Andy Reid, kind of close to how does he feel of an addition of Odell Beckham Jr. or what is working and trending that way. And Reid basically said, the status quo on him is that he loves Odell Beckham as a wide receiver, can't get too much into him, but if Brett Veach likes the guy, he will try to get him. If not, you move forward and you get who you need to do to be successful in 2023. And that's basically all it is. And also an update with Odell Beckham Jr. is he will start meeting with head coaches and owners in Arizona. Also, I think he's going to Baltimore as well to meet with the Ravens first, which I find interesting in my mindset just because now there's Lamar Jackson trade requests going around. So I don't know why Odell would want to go there. So that's interesting to see. But hey, I'm going to let that be. But focusing on Odell Beckham Jr. and the potential of the Kansas City Chiefs to sign him, I think that one would be more likely than DeAndre Hopkins, but I'm not going to hold it like at a huge percentage. I'd still hold it maybe like at a 10-15% chance. Like I find that very slim as well because Odell, it's another type of situation where he's coming off of multiple injuries. You don't know what you're getting. And honestly, from a media standpoint, we don't know what he's requesting as well. Because if he was requesting something that was manageable, he would have been signed by now. And also, he's had reports saying, actually, not reports, himself saying, I never requested $20 million. I just don't want $4 million, along those lines. And to me, it's like, okay, so you want more than $4 million. Like, how north of $4 million do you want to go? Like, are you in the 10 million range, or are you like in the 6 million range? It's interesting to see how the Odell Beckham Jr. thing will break down as well. Where will he sign? How long will the Kansas City Chiefs be interested? I know one thing with Brett Veach as well is like he will never hit the panic button like on a guy like a DeAndre Hopkins or an Odell Beckham Jr. He will stand his stance, and if someone comes his way and takes his deal, it's a win-win for the Kansas City Chiefs. If someone wants to go somewhere else to make more money, he'll let it go, and he has a plan in place to move forward. Honestly, with me and Odell Beckham Jr., I think he would be a solid addition. I think, honestly, if healthy, he could put up around Juju numbers. And yeah, a lot of you find that probably insane. I think anyone in this offense can eat. And if Odell Beckham Jr. is healthy, if Kadarius Toney is healthy, and if Sky Moore is healthy, if you focus in on one of those guys and they become a key target for Patrick Mahomes, one of those guys can easily be a 1,000-yard receiver. I don't think that's a stretch of the imagination whatsoever. It's going to be interesting, as I mentioned with DeAndre Hopkins. It's going to be interesting to see how Odell Beckham Jr. pans out and if he signs with the team like the Kansas City Chiefs or if he signs with a non-contender, and we'll find out if it's about the money at the end of the day. As I mentioned earlier in this video, this week the owner meetings are going on in Arizona, and this is basically the time where the reporters will go coach to coach, team to team, and try to get any little ounce of rumors they can or can create. And it kind of happened with the San Francisco 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan, where he mentioned saying that they have fielded calls, trade talk calls in regards to Brandon Aiyuk. Now, he didn't mention any team whatsoever. But that's all the Chiefs Kingdom needs. They just need that little sliver of Brandon Aiyuk has been mentioned in trade talks, and they're like, oh, yep, he's coming to Kansas City. And it's humorous. It really is. I get it. I love this stretch of imagination. It's what Chiefs Kingdom does best, especially on social media. I do appreciate it. And also, before I do I would love Brandon Aiyuk as a Kansas City Chief. Honestly, if it was realistic and it was to happen, that would be probably my go-to guy you need to go get. A guy still on his rookie contract, and yes, you would have to pay him. He would cost probably a pretty penny draft capital. I think it would cost more than your first round pick. If it was as easy as pick 31, I think he would have been traded. And that's where this thing gets kind of two-sided, and where it could kind of mess with the Kansas City Chiefs' plan is, if the Chiefs really do want to focus on the draft, are you going to trade multiple picks for a guy like Brandon Aiyuk? Or are you going to get a wide receiver in the draft to where you can have him on a 5-year deal, the 5th-year optional if you get him in the first round, or second, third round, and still a 4-year deal, and you have him mold, grow, mature into the system? Or you just go the Brandon Aiyuk way and you trade a first and maybe, I don't know what it would take, like a first and a third. That's 2 high-end picks. Would it be a first and next year's third? I mean, I know a lot of people and a lot of Chiefs Kingdom be like, yeah, do it all day, every day. But you got to look at all the factors with that. Yeah, Brandon Aiyuk's a great player. And if you've put him in this offense, yes, he would definitely be probably a top 10 wide receiver because he would be a legit number 1. Right now, he's sharing time with Deebo Samuel, but also in a run-first offense under Kyle Shanahan. So I think he would definitely see his play elevate. The thing that just gets me is if you're trading a first and a third, there's still other holes you need to address in the draft, and you basically converted 2 picks into a wide receiver, a star one nonetheless, but now how are you going to answer other holes on this team? So I think that's too rich of the value, and also you would have to pay Brandon Aiyuk next year, so he'd be locked down, which could eat in the future, I almost said draft capital, money in the future for free agency or re-signing anyone. Unlike if you draft someone, they're under a rookie deal for 4, or in the first round, a 5th-year option. So it's interesting to see. There's definitely many more takes than just Brandon Aiyuk's a star player. Yeah, just give him the picks for him. And also, the main point of focus, even though Kyle Shanahan said they did field the calls, he said that they are not interested in trading Brandon Aiyuk. Now, I do know that could just be word of mouth. At the end of the day, if you get an offer you like, you might bite at it. But right now, that is what we got to work with. And honestly, I'd be kind of surprised to see Brandon Aiyuk traded, because I think he's a big part of that San Francisco 49ers offense. They have Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, that star-studded defense, and then Brandon Aiyuk. And also, it sounds like they're moving forward with Brock Purdy. You got to give Brock Purdy all the talent in the world to make sure he succeeds. Definitely coming off of major elbow surgery, but also, you don't know if he's a one-hit wonder. And if the Niners stick with him and they decide not to focus on Trey Lance, that could hurt if you take one of his pieces away. And I know that I don't even know how I got tied up talking about the Niners, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Trey Lance in the future as well. So I don't believe they'll trade Brandon Aiyuk, but you got 27 days until the draft? Well, not even that. I think it's like 30. You got like 30 days until the draft. So anything can happen within a month. I know Brett Veach, this is his time. We heard last year that he was interested in guys like A.J. Brown. He's gonna make those calls, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did call the Niners in regards to Brandon Aiyuk. It's just whether or not he can strike a deal. With that, Chiefs Kingdom, I'm going to close this video off. Hey, it was wide receiver heavy. What else is new? You let me know how you feel on a potential trade for a Brandon Aiyuk or a DeAndre Hopkins. Which one would you prefer? This better be a landslide. Everyone should choose Brandon Aiyuk. If the Kansas City Chiefs do want to make a trade, that's the guy to go after. With that, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you did like this video, please give me a big thumbs up. Y'all take care. Peace.